Previously, Jin-Woo successfully defeats Demon King Baron, gaining powerful rewards and unlocking the Demon Monarch's full potential. He uses the purified blood of the Demon King to create the holy water of life, hoping it will cure his mother. After defeating Baron, Jin-Woo returns to the hospital, carrying the holy water of life and believing it could heal his mother. With trembling hands, he gently gives her the potion, a flicker of hope igniting within him. Moments later, a miracle happens. His mother's eyes open and she greets him with a warm smile. Jin-Woo is momentarily stunned and can't hold back his emotions as tears begin to fall. Jin-Woo stands in awe, witnessing this precious moment. All his efforts had finally paid off. This was the greatest gift he could ever receive. Yet, a pang of unease settles in. Since becoming a hunter, he had distanced himself from those he loved, and now loneliness begins to creep into his heart. Taking a break in the park, Jin-Woo glanced at his phone, flooded with missed calls. A news report about a dragon flying over Korea caught his eye, and he quickly realized it had to be him and Kai-sel. Just then, a call came in from Mr. Go, who sounded anxious. Mr. Go offered to come see him right away, but Jin-Woo declined and saying he'd head to the association office soon. After Jin-Woo arrived at the Hunter Association office, Mr. Go immediately informed him that in 4 days, the association's hunters would be launching a raid on Jeju Island to wipe out the ant monsters. They needed his help for the operation and asked if he was willing to join. Jin-Woo hesitated, even though he would normally accept right away, especially given that the island was crawling with high-level monsters. His thoughts drifted to his family, and he didn't want to make them worry. Before Jin-Woo could respond, he suddenly sensed a powerful magical energy around him. Noticing Jin-Woo's reaction, Mr. Go laughed and praised him, saying that Jin-Woo's senses were indeed sharp, able to detect energy from a distance. Mr. Go then explained that the energy came from the Korean and Japanese Rank S hunters, who were doing practice matches in the gym as preparation for the Jeju Island raid. He added that Goto Ruji, Japan's top Rank S hunter, was also there. Hearing Goto Ruji's name only heightened Jin-Woo's curiosity. In the Korean Hunter Association's gym, Baek Yun-ho was locked in an intense match against Ma Dong-wook, the Guild Master of Fame Guild, one of Korea's top 5 guilds. Their clash was so fierce that its impact could be felt throughout the arena. When Jin-Woo and Mr. Go arrived, Mr. Go explained that the magical energy Jin-Woo had sensed earlier was coming from their battle. Jin-Woo noticed that Baek Yun-ho seemed to be at a disadvantage. Watching nearby, Choi Jong-in commented that if Baek Yun-ho were fighting seriously, Ma Dong-wook wouldn't stand a chance. In his view, Yun-ho often struggled to control his strength around others, sometimes even losing track of friend from foe. Soon after, 10 Rank S hunters from Japan entered the gym. Ippei Izawa, Mari Ishida, Ken Tanaka, Minoru Hoshino, Atsushi Kumamoto, Kanoe Tawada, Tatsumi Fujishima, Kei, Akari Shimizu, and their leader, Goto Ruji. Jin-Woo observed their arrival from a distance, focusing on Ruji, rumored to be Japan's top Rank S hunter. Meanwhile, Akari curiously, she asked who the man standing in the distance was. Hanekawa explained that it was Sung Jin-Woo, the newly promoted Rank S hunter. Ruji, also observing Jin-Woo, sensed something extraordinary hidden within him. Despite Jin-Woo concealing his strength, his powerful magical aura was unmistakable to Ruji, who considered him an exceptional assassin-type hunter. However, Hanekawa clarified that Jin-Woo was officially classified as a mage-type hunter, surprising Ruji. It wasn't only the Japanese hunters who were intrigued by Jin-Woo. The Korean hunters also took notice. Lim Taegyu recognized him as the hunter who had disrupted Lee Min-sung's debut and realized it was his first time seeing Jin-Woo in person. Hunter Cha sensed the shift in atmosphere as soon as she noticed Jin-Woo's presence. Kei, with a keen sense of smell like Hunter Cha, found the surrounding hunters' scent nauseating. Meanwhile, Baek Yun-ho and Ma Dong-wook continued their sparring session. Hanekawa, watching the duel, felt that South Korea's top hunters were no match for Japan's. However, Ruji saw value in a few Korean hunters, particularly Hunter Cha and Mr. Go, whom he considered on par with Japan's best. Hanekawa's dismissive comment caught the attention of Park Jong-soo, the Guild Master of the Knights Guild, one of South Korea's most influential guilds with the highest number of Rank A hunters. Jong-soo called her out, remarking that her statement was inappropriate since, as just a translator, Hanekawa couldn't fully understand the situation. Feeling insulted, Hanekawa calmly challenged Jong-soo to prove his skills in a duel. Jong-soo accepted, with the rule that whoever grabbed the other's arm first would be the winner. There was no need for a brutal fight, as that would be detrimental for the upcoming Jeju Island raid. Hanekawa agreed, and they both prepared for the match. Hanekawa launched the first strike, darting forward with a barrage of swift attacks. But Jong-soo, with his quick reflexes, dodged each blow effortlessly. Hanekawa pushed harder, intensifying her attacks, but suddenly her arm was knocked back. Jong-soo casually remarked that it wasn't an attack, just a small, meaningless push. Hanekawa shot back with a smirk, taunting him for striking a silly pose despite his torn pants. Spotting an opening, she charged in again. However, Jong-soo swiftly seized the opportunity and grabbed her arm, ending the duel with a win. He commented that fighting humans was trickier due to their unpredictable moves, unlike battling monsters. Ryuji was impressed by their duel. He asked Hanekawa to share his proposal with everyone. He then suggested they have another sparring session between Rank S hunters, following the same rules as before. Mr. Go agreed but noted that non-combatants and mage hunters couldn't participate since assessing their skills would be challenging. Yunho suggested a rule change. He proposed that anyone who could touch their opponent's back or knock them out would be declared the winner, and also suggested making it a team match. Hanekawa relayed this to Ryuji, who immediately grasped the advantage of knocking opponents out and realized the rule would favor assassin-type hunters. He agreed to the new setup. With everything settled, they prepared to start the practice match. Team Korea consisted of hunters Baek Yunho, Ma Dongwook, Hunter Cha, and Lim Taegyu, while Team Japan included hunters Ken Tanaka, Minoru Hoshino, Atsushi Kumamoto, and Kanoe Tawada. From a distance, Jin-Woo observed, noting that Goto Ryuji was sitting out, likely to assess the Korean hunter's capabilities. He felt lucky to witness such a rare match between Rank S hunters. As the two teams squared off, Ma Dongwook activated his skill and signaled the start. Tanaka couldn't help but admire Ma Dongwook's strength, marveling at how he could grow to a giant size. Eager for a power battle, Tanaka charged forward, exchanging blows with Ma Dongwook. Their fists clashed, sending a powerful shockwave across the arena. At the same time, Hoshino dashed toward Lim Taegyu, who quickly kept his distance and summoned several magic arrows, launching them at Hoshino. Although Hoshino dodged the attacks, he was visibly struggling. Mr. Go watched and noted that, even though the building was reinforced with the strongest magic stones, these hunters were managing to shake the room within seconds. Meanwhile, Yunho transformed and prepared to engage Kumamoto. Kumamoto found the match rules absurd and decided to fight with more aggression. He attacked Yunho from behind but quickly pulled back, feeling uneasy and doubting his compatibility as a hunter. Yunho sensed Kumamoto's killing intent in the previous move, yet was puzzled by his retreat. Determined to get serious, Yunho's hands turned white, his gaze sharpened, and he lunged with his claws. Kumamoto barely evaded. Jong-soo, watching, was in disbelief, realizing his earlier duel seemed like child's play compared to the intensity now unfolding. Suddenly, a huge explosion echoed across the arena as Ma Dongwook was defeated by Tanaka. Tanaka declared himself the victor in this test of strength. At the same moment, Taegyu was thrown against the wall with great force, and Hoshino, satisfied, claimed his victory as well. Baek Yunho sighed, watching as Ma Dongwook and Lim Taegyu were defeated. Now he was left to face 3 opponents on his own. He realized that the Japanese hunters found it easier to target him first rather than dealing with Hunter Cha. Meanwhile, Tawada felt cornered and disoriented by Hunter Cha's fast and unpredictable attacks. Known as the Dancer, Hunter Cha used her agility to overwhelm her opponents quickly. She struck Tawada from all sides with swift, precise movements. When Tawada tried to counter, Hunter Cha's rapid attack knocked her hat off. In a flash, she moved behind Tawada and tapped her back, securing victory. After defeating Tawada, Hunter Cha hurried to help Baek Yunho, who was surrounded by the Japanese hunters. Suddenly, Kumamoto came up from behind, ready to strike. But with lightning-fast reflexes, Hunter Cha landed a series of blows directly to his face. Shimizu and Fujishima, watching from the sidelines, were stunned to see Hunter Cha deliver 14 punches in one go. Realizing she might have gone overboard, Hunter Cha began to panic. Kumamoto, now injured, looked furious. The Japanese hunters grew tense, knowing that when Kumamoto lost control, he could become dangerously unpredictable. Ryuji felt the same concern. If they didn't stop Kumamoto soon, the Korean team could suffer serious injuries. Enraged, Kumamoto launched a brutal attack on Hunter Cha, his strikes hitting the ground hard enough to crack it. She managed to dodge, but this time she was cornered. Kumamoto threw a powerful final blow, shaking the entire area. However, Jin-Woo suddenly stepped in to protect Hunter Cha, blocking Kumamoto's powerful kicks with ease. This infuriated Kumamoto, who tried to attack again, but Jin-Woo swiftly locked him down and slammed him to the ground. Ryuji was surprised to see Jin-Woo's movements. This didn't seem like the skill of a mage-type hunter. He felt like he had to find out more. Meanwhile, the training match concluded, with the Japanese team emerging victorious. In his mind, Yunho felt disappointed because the difference in skill between them was so great, even though he had given his all. Soon after, Hanekawa approached Jin-Woo to deliver a message from Ryuji. Ryuji stepped forward and challenged Jin-Woo to a one-on-one match. From Ryuji's aura, Jin-Woo sensed he wanted to test his abilities. Jin-Woo smiled in response, which only made Ryuji angrier, as if he were being mocked. Although Jin-Woo wasn't fully confident in his current abilities, he felt this was a great opportunity to test his strength. Hanekawa relayed Jin-Woo's condition that he would only fight if Ryuji used all his strength. Hearing this, Ryuji became even more irritated but found the situation interesting. He ordered Shimizu to prepare to heal anyone who got hurt, especially Jin-Woo. Taegyu, watching from a distance, felt the rising tension. Ma Dongwook admired Jin-Woo's bravery as the 10th-ranked S-hunter, challenging Ryuji, the #1 hunter in Japan. Hunter Cha shared similar feelings but remained worried about the situation. Baek Yunho realized he should stop the fight, but his curiosity about the outcome kept him silent. He thought if Jin-Woo was truly a hunter growing stronger over time, his current power was likely much greater than before. When Jin-Woo called for the sparring to start, Ryuji suddenly launched an attack without warning at incredible speed. However, Jin-Woo managed to dodge with amazing reflexes. Frustrated by the missed attack, Ryuji increased his speed and power, but Jin-Woo easily evaded his strikes while smiling, which only fueled Ryuji's anger. Izawa watched the event anxiously, feeling that the match should be stopped. Tanaka, standing next to him, noticed something and commented that Go-To Ryuji seemed to want to fight more seriously. Taegyu observed Ryuji's attack speed, struggling to keep up with his lightning-fast movements, acknowledging how terrifying those strikes were. Meanwhile, Ma Dongwook was impressed, realizing it was rare for anyone to dodge an attack from one of Japan's best hunters. He concluded that Sung Jin-Woo was indeed impressive. However, Hunter Cha had a different opinion, believing Jin-Woo was far more than just impressive. Even under a barrage of attacks, Jin-Woo continued to provoke Ryuji to strike even more. The match continued, with Ryuji launching a flurry of attacks at incredible speed. Still, Jin-Woo managed to evade every strike, which only added to Ryuji's frustration. Ryuji began to worry that if he didn't take this seriously, he might actually lose to Jin-Woo. Finally, he decided to ramp up his attacks with deadly intent. As Jin-Woo felt a scratch on his cheek, the system warned him of a strong killing intent nearby. With deadly intent, Ryuji unleashed a lethal attack. However, in a surprising moment, Jin-Woo managed to block the attack by gripping Ryuji's arm. Jin-Woo realized that if he had been a moment slower, he might have lost his right eye. Ryuji was shocked by Jin-Woo's incredible strength, wondering why Jin-Woo only held his arm. Ryuji was furious, thinking Jin-Woo was toying with him. But Jin-Woo calmly explained that the match had ended the moment he grabbed Ryuji's arm. Even so, he knew Ryuji wouldn't give up easily. Both amplified their power, preparing to unleash their ultimate attacks. However, before they could clash, Baek Yunho and Hunter Cha quickly intervened to stop Jin-Woo's movement, while Hoshino blocked Ryuji from the opposite direction. Kei then conjured a magical wall to separate them. Yunho, in a serious tone, asked Hanekawa to end the sparring session for today, and Hanekawa agreed without hesitation. After the match, Yunho apologized to Jin-Woo for getting involved, but Jin-Woo assured him it was fine. Ma Dong-wook then approached Jin-Woo, expressing his admiration and admitting that Jin-Woo had managed to match Goto Ruji. He offered Jin-Woo a place in his guild, which needed a strong fighter like him. But from a distance, Choi Jong-in shouted that Jin-Woo was actually a hunter mage, surprising Ma Dong-wook. Meanwhile, Jin-Woo thought he might have gone a little overboard. Still, he felt satisfied because he now understood the strengths of all the hunters present. More importantly, Jin-Woo had placed his shadow soldiers with each hunter to keep an eye on them from the shadows. Before leaving the gym, Jin-Woo informed Mr. Go about the raid on Jeju Island, news that left Mr. Go stunned. At the same time, Hanekawa noticed Goto Ruji's face, drenched in sweat and showing a rare expression of fear. That night, Yunho pondered Jin-Woo's growing strength over time. He wondered how much money it would take to recruit him, though he knew it was impossible. Still, Yunho was determined to maintain a good relationship with Jin-Woo. Soon his phone rang, informing him that the list of raid participants on Jeju Island had been announced. Yunho was shocked to see that Jin-Woo's name was not on the list. In a hotel, Goto Ruji was calling Reiji Sugimoto, vice president of the Draw Sword Guild. Ruji asked Sugimoto if he knew of any great hunters in South Korea. Sugimoto was puzzled by the question, stating that no matter how good someone was, they would still be below Ruji's level. Sugimoto asked for the hunter's name, and Ruji mentioned Sung Jin-Woo, who recently became an S-rank hunter. However, Sugimoto informed him that Jin-Woo's name was not on the Jeju Island raid participant list. Ruji was stunned to hear this, unable to believe that Mr. Go would form a raid team without a talented hunter like Jin-Woo. After hanging up, Ruji recalled the terrifying feeling he experienced when facing Jin-Woo. He wondered if that feeling was death, and realized he might have weakened. The scene then shifts to Jeju Island, in the ant nest. The ant queen realized they needed to leave the island as there was no food left. The ant children had even started eating each other. The queen stressed that they needed strong soldiers to lead their kingdom. A giant egg was visible among the others, and the ant queen hoped it would hatch into the strongest king to lead their colony. Soon the egg reacted, and sharp claws emerged from within, breaking the shell. A frightening monster appeared, emitting an incredibly terrifying aura. The scene then moves to Jin-Woo's apartment, on the day his mother was discharged from the hospital. Upon entering the apartment, Jin-Woo was surprised to see how dirty and messy it was. He felt confused and asked Jina about what happened while he was gone. With a smile on her face, his mother explained that she hadn't cleaned the house for 4 years and asked if they wanted to help. They then started cleaning the house together. For a moment, Jin-Woo smiled, happily seeing his family's current condition. Soon after, his mother asked about Jin-Woo's father's whereabouts, wondering if he had ever returned while she was in the hospital. Jin-Woo paused for a moment. He also understood why his mother didn't want to leave this apartment. She still hoped his father would return here. Jin-Woo reflected that his mother needed him more than the raid on Jeju Island. After the Jeju Island raid plan was announced, the news spread quickly. Several TV stations began airing everything related to Jeju Island, especially about the ant monsters. The ant colony had evolved rapidly. In the first and second stages of evolution, the ants still crawled and behaved like normal ants, but their body size was huge. In the third stage of evolution, they began to change shape. At this stage, they could walk like humans, use 4 legs as hands, and move nimbly. Recent investigations revealed the next evolution. The ants that had caused damage in Japan now looked even more human-like, with wings on their backs. This might be the last chance for the joint Korean and Japanese raid team to defeat the ant colony, with the future of Jeju Island and South Korea at stake. The list of raid members also spread widely, and the public learned that hunter Sung Jin-Woo was not participating. This led Korean netizens to harshly criticize him. Many felt ashamed of Jin-Woo's presence in their country. While walking in the city, Jin-Woo saw these harsh comments and worried about their impact on Jina. Soon after, a call from Jinho informed him that he had found a place for their guild office. Upon arrival, Jin-Ho showed their spacious guild office and mentioned they needed 3 people to establish a guild. Jin-Woo suggested they recruit 1 more person, while Jin-Ho pondered who would be suitable. Then, Jin-Ho gave Jin-Woo a business card of someone looking for him, an English speaker who would be in Korea for a few days, hoping to meet Jin-Woo. Jin-Woo suddenly sensed a killing intent. He quickly informed Jin-Ho that he needed to head back home, while also activating his shadow exchange skill. Jin-Ho was taken aback to see Jin-Woo vanish and be replaced by his shadow warrior. Jin-Woo now stood in an alley in a residential area. He saw a criminal threatening a woman with a knife. From behind, Jin-Woo interrupted, questioning the criminal's actions. The criminal looked at Jin-Woo and cursed, suddenly attacking with his knife, but it couldn't pierce Jin-Woo's skin. The criminal was shocked, and suddenly the knife was in Jin-Woo's hand. Jin-Woo slashed the criminal's leg, wounding him. Jin-Woo then told the criminal to change his ways and gave him until midnight to turn himself in. He also put one of his shadow warriors on the criminal to keep an eye on him. As Jin-Woo walked away, he thought about the Jeju Island raid that would take place tomorrow. The next day, the large-scale raid on Jeju Island began. Helicopters and dozens of warships had been deployed, cutting through the ocean toward Jeju. On board those ships, the best hunters prepared to hold the front line. As the guild master of the Guild Knights, Park Jong-soo rallied his members, encouraging them to brace themselves mentally. Meanwhile, as the guild master of the Guild Fame, Ma Dong-wook entrusted command of the rear to his deputy. The deputy was determined to do her best and hoped Dong-wook would return safely. At the same time, Hunter Lim Taegyu, guild master of the Guild Reapers, was calling his deputy to check on Lee Min-sung's position. When he learned Lee Min-sung was at the front line, Taegyu grew worried. He reminded his deputy just how valuable Lee Min-sung was and insisted he be moved to the rear or hidden. However, the idiot Lee Min-sung tried to take advantage of this situation to increase his prestige in front of the reporters. Hunters from both the Guild Hunters and Guild White Tiger were also preparing to hold the front lines. Even retired hunters had joined the fight. The S-rank hunters were now in the helicopter heading to Jeju Island. A cameraman introduced himself as a member of the official Hunters Reporting Center and informed them that the raid would be broadcast live on TV. Yun-ho, shaking his hand, was puzzled as to why a cameraman was in such a dangerous place. Ma Dong-wook revealed that this would be the first time the public would be able to watch an S-rank raid, especially after the 3rd failure. They needed to make sure this mission succeeded to get revenge on the ants on Jeju Island. Yun-ho privately thought that if this raid failed, it would be the end for South Korea. Meanwhile, Yun-ho was surprised by Byung-yu's decision to join the raid. With a joking tone, Byung-yu said he knew Yun-ho would take high risks and needed to be healed. Everyone laughed at his comment, lightening the tense atmosphere. Meanwhile, the helicopter was nearing Jeju Island, and Byung-yu could be seen shaking, trying to hide his fear. At the same time, the S-rank hunters from Japan had arrived on Jeju Island first. Gudo Ruji took a look around and said it seemed like a ghost town, with the carcasses of ants scattered everywhere. He wondered if the ants were cannibalizing each other, or if there was a predator among them. Ruji then contacted the Japanese team, which had split into 4 groups around the mountain near the ant nest, and asked each team to respond. Once all the teams had checked in, Ruji gave the order, "Everyone, release it now." Instantly, massive magical energy waves exploded from the 4 corners of Jeju Island. Once inside the helicopter, Choi Jong-in saw that the Japanese team had already launched their attack. The magical energy waves they released caught the attention of thousands of ants, who began flying out of the nest. Some of the ants then started attacking the Korean team's helicopter. Choi Jong-in got ready to face them and asked the other hunters if he could take care of it. He quickly cast the fire spell Flame Spear, launching it directly at the ants and incinerating them in an instant. Byung-yu was impressed by the attack, but Jong-in knew it wasn't enough to take down all the ants. Jong-in then conjured a massive fireball in his hand and warned the others that the helicopter might shake a little. Without hesitation, he unleashed a huge burst of fire, incinerating the ants in front of him. He realized that these ants had evolved and had resistance comparable to A-rank dungeon monsters. So he jumped out of the helicopter, flames trailing from his legs, ready to test the ant's strength on his own. Ma Dongwook was concerned about Zhang Yin's safety, but Cha Hae-in reassured him, saying that Zhang Yin would only reach his full potential when facing a large number of enemies. Zhang Yin landed on the ground and was immediately charged by a swarm of giant ants. But Zhang Yin was cool as a cucumber, activating his fire magic and burning every ant that came near. He smiled, recalling how much fun he'd had with ants last time. He kept unleashing explosive blasts of fire, wiping out his enemies around him. Once the area was clear, he told his team it was safe to land. Before the Korean hunters jumped out of the helicopter, Ma Dongwook made sure everyone was ready for anything. He reminded them that this mission could end like the last one, where they might end up trapped inside the ant nest. He also noted that the Japanese team could only draw the ants' attention for about an hour, and within that time, they needed to kill the ant queen. After the warning, the Korean team jumped out of the helicopter and began their mission. Meanwhile, aboard the Japanese warship, Reiji Sugimoto monitored the situation closely. He instructed the ship's crew to start the attack by activating the electric jamming waves. Moments later, the electric jamming waves were transmitted from the satellite, covering the entire Jeju island and disrupting the ants' communication signals, preventing them from receiving orders from their queen. At the same time, the Japanese team acting as bait continued to fend off the attacking ant monsters. Shimizu commented that if things kept going like this, they might wipe out the entire ant swarm before the Korean team even had a chance to kill the queen. Meanwhile, Team Delta sees the fire magic lighting up at the mountain's peak. Ipei recognized the magic as coming from Choi Jong-in. Kei was curious who would come out on top if his magic were to face off against that fire magic, and behind him, dozens of frozen ants stood stiff, showcasing the incredible power of his ice magic. The scene shifts to the Korean team standing at the base of the mountain's crater, the entrance to the main nest of the ant monsters. At the top of the crater, we see Zhang Yin's flame prison blocking the way for the B-rank ants, cutting off their reinforcements. The tunnel had many holes, including one leading to the queen ant nest. Zhang Yin immediately springs into action, creating dozens of fireballs and firing them into all the tunnels, making them bounce off the walls. Yunho asked Zhang Yin what he was doing. Zhang Yin explains that the nest is a complex maze of interconnected tunnels. The fireballs will guide them. The path to the queen's chamber will be protected by a barrier. It seemed that his assumptions were correct when Zhang Yin found the main access to the queen ant's room and signals the hunters to move in. The scene then switches to Jin-Woo, who is absorbed in his daily routine of completing quests from the system. His status window showed a steady increase in his power. Noticing the unusual silence, he guessed the Jeju Island raid had begun. Looking at things from a different angle, Jin-Woo figured that even without him, the Korean and Japanese S-rank hunters should be more than enough to take on the raid, if nothing out of the ordinary happened along the way. He was well aware that in the world of hunters, unexpected dangers were par for the course. The scene shifts back to the Korean team as they continue pushing deeper into the ant colony, cutting down any ants that block their path. Zhang Yin remarks that these ants are far too weak to be considered the queen's royal guard. Taegyu chimes in, pointing out that the ants in this area seem blind, likely bred specifically to guard this corridor. He's confident they should have no trouble taking them down. Byung-gyu, however, questions if this is really the path to the queen's chamber, noting that in some cases, ant queens abandon their colonies to ensure their species' survival. Yunho acknowledges the possibility but dismisses it, saying these are just ants, they wouldn't think that far ahead. They keep going until they get to a huge open space with thousands of unhatched ant eggs spread out. Zhang Yin gets ready to burn them all, but then Hunter Cha stops him. She points out one egg that's already hatched and much larger than the rest. Min Byung-gyu freaks out, wondering what could have come out of that egg. Yunho tries to calm him down. He reminds everyone that they just need to kill the queen. Everything else is secondary. Meanwhile, outside the ant nest, Shimizu was teasing Kenzo, who looked beaten and bruised. Kenzo grumbled, complaining about how the ants had ganged up on him, leaving his shoulder and hip injured. With a smirk, Shimizu taunted him, asking if he wanted healing, but only if he agreed to her terms. Kenzo cracked a small smile and told Shimizu to quit messing around as the next wave of ants began to swarm in. Suddenly, Shimizu's head was chopped off in the blink of an eye. Kenzo and Tatsumi were stunned, eyes wide with shock. Kenzo yelled at Tatsumi to stay sharp. The monster was targeting them. The monster charged again. Kenzo swung his fist, but the creature was too quick. In an instant, Kenzo's head was taken off. Tatsumi, still in shock, tried to fight back, but before he could react, the monster beheaded him just as quickly. In a matter of seconds, Team Charlie is utterly annihilated, left in a grisly, brutal state. The scene shifts to the Korean team, now facing the Queen's royal guards. Ma Dongwook raises his shield, blocking the ants' attacks and movements, then tells Hunter Cha to strike. Hunter Cha leaps into the air, plunging her sword right into the ant's head, slicing it cleanly in half. As more ants charge, Hunter Cha swiftly slashes, killing the monster instantly. From the back, Byung-yu takes down an ant and reminds Yunho that even though their heads are crushed, these ants can still last about 10 minutes. To fully kill them, their arms and legs need to be severed as well. Yunho guesses that these ants are first-generation royal guards, and he predicts that the next enemies they'll face will be second-generation royal guards. However, Byung-yu smiled and told the hunters not to worry, as he'd have their backs. He then opened his spellbook and cast a protection spell, and the magic enveloped them instantly. Byung-yu explains that this is a high-level buff. With it, even though they're up against a lot of enemies, they won't be hurt at all. Soon after, a swarm of ants charges at them, but the hunters aren't fazed. With the protective buff active, they feel even more confident, knowing one hunter can now take on 10 ants at once. The scene shifts outside the ant nest. Team Delta moves to check on Team Charlie, who has lost contact with them. Kei and Ippei arrive at the last known location of Team Charlie's communication. Seeing the signs of a battle, Ippei quickly concludes that they must have been up against several monster ants. As they move through the area, they find Tatsumi's glasses and the gruesome body of a fallen Team Charlie member. Ippei is stunned, struggling to process the horrific sight before him. Suddenly, Kei, whose sense of smell is extremely sharp, catches a foul stench so overwhelming that it makes him gag. The smell is unfamiliar and terrifying, leaving Kei wondering where it's coming from. In front of them, a terrifying surge of magical energy appears. The powerful magical energy materializes right in front of them. Panicking, Kei unleashes his ice magic brutally, creating an ice wall for protection. But the figure is too strong. Its claws easily shatter the ice wall, annihilating Team Delta in an instant. Meanwhile, inside the ant nest, the Korean team had already taken down many royal guard ants, but they only had about 30 minutes before the electric jamming waves died out. Hunter Cha smelled a pungent odor coming from a cave hallway ahead and suspected that the Ant Queen was there, surrounded by her royal guards. As they made their way down the corridor, they finally spotted the massive Ant Queen, hiding behind 8 royal guards. Ma Dongwook took the lead, planning to face the Queen and distract her, while Hunter Cha and the others dealt with the royal guards. The hunters agreed and got ready for action. Choi Jong-in launched the first attack, summoning a fire magic dragon. He explained that he usually holds back his power, but this time, he was going all out and using all his mana. But suddenly, one of the ants attacked from behind. Fortunately, Taegyu managed to protect him and killed the ant just in time. Yunho jumped into action next, transforming into a beast. His body grew larger, and the armor he wore shattered as he became a white tiger with sharp claws and heightened animal instincts. In no time, he shredded 2 ants with ease. Watching this, Hunter Cha stood there in awe, amazed by the power of Yunho's beast transformation skill. Ma Dongwook yelled, reminding Hunter Cha to act quickly. Hunter Cha stabbed her sword into the ground and activated her provoking quake skill. Magic energy surged from the sword, slowing the movement of the ants within its range. Seizing the opportunity, Ma Dongwook charged forward, drawing the Queen's attention. A bright light shone from his shield as he stood tall, facing the queen head-on. The news anchor in the broadcast booth instructed the cameraman to move closer and get a clearer shot, as the viewership had increased by about 80%. But suddenly, Min Byung-yu pulled him back, reminding him that the fight was getting too dangerous, and there were no guarantees of safety. He told the cameraman to stay behind him, as the situation was becoming more serious. The live stream of the raid was being watched by almost all of South Korea, including an excited grandmother who was watching with great enthusiasm. The news anchor reported on the raid. The hunters had wiped out half of the Royal Guard ants, and now only 3 Royal Guards remained. The raid seemed to be almost over. After the last 2 Royal Guards were defeated, they would just have to face the Ant Queen. The news anchor wrapped up, saying, "All of the powerful guards have been taken care of, and now all that's left is the Ant Queen." In the broadcast booth, the crew was pumped about the results. The TV viewership shot up to 85%, breaking their highest broadcast record. With this outcome, they were starting to think that South Korea could position itself alongside countries like the United States, Russia, China, and France when it comes to completing Gate Rank S. The scene shifts back to the raid, where the Korean hunters have surrounded the Ant Queen and are preparing to strike. From a distance, Taegyu launches a barrage of magic arrows that hit the Ant Queen's head, forcing her to stagger. Yunho, with his sharp claws, continues to tear at the Queen's legs. Enraged, the Ant Queen spits venomous liquid from her mouth, hitting both Yunho and Ma Dongwook, who are nearby. Byung-yu immediately activates healing magic, neutralizing the poison and restoring their condition instantly. Smiling, Byung-yu says, "If you want to defeat us, you should have aimed that attack at me." The Ant Queen turns her focus on Byung-yu. However, Ma Dongwoo quickly blocks her attack with his shield. Jong-in takes action, ordering the hunters to back off, and successfully sets the Ant Queen on fire. He then prepares for the final strike, unleashing a massive fire spell that engulfs the Ant Queen's body. Yunho, watching this, realizes the Ant Queen is nearly defeated, and victory is within reach. But suddenly, the Ant Queen screams, releasing a wave of energy that radiates from her body. The hunters took cover behind Ma Dongwoo, who protected them from the explosion. Yunho realizes the scream isn't a death cry, but a call for reinforcements. On the warship, Sugimoto panics and tells Ruji that all the ants are heading back to their nest. Ruji is shocked to realize the noise jamming isn't working. He stares at the sky, seeing thousands of ants flying back, wondering what is really happening. As the Ant Queen lets out a loud scream, Hunter Cha immediately moves, slashing the Queen's neck without hesitation, ending her life on the spot. Hunter Cha feels a sense of relief, thinking that their mission is finally complete. With this result, Taegyu questions whether they are now among the 7 nations capable of completing an S-rank gate. However, Yunho interrupts, saying that he senses something is off. In a panic, Ma Dongwook informs them that he has received news from the association that the entire ant army is now heading back to their nest, urging them to evacuate immediately. Panic begins to spread among the hunters as they wonder if their time is up and whether the Japanese hunters have failed in their mission. At the same time, Choi Jong-in realizes that his flame prison skill has been destroyed. As the tension rises, suddenly a terrifying aura fills the air, freezing the hunters in fear. From the darkness, a black ant monster emerges, walking towards them, exuding a menacing aura. This creature is the Ant King, a muscular humanoid ant with black steel-like armor, 2 sharp claws, and 4 translucent wings. Hunter Cha trembles violently, kneeling, unable to bear the intense stench and pressure from the creature. As the Ant King walks past the hunters, Ma Dongwook feels his body shiver, his bones as if being crushed by the monster's aura. The Ant King approaches the dead Ant Queen and pauses for a moment, as though holding back its rage. Suddenly, it releases a deadly energy so powerful that the hunters are forced to kneel, intimidated by its overwhelming power. Hunter Cha shakes uncontrollably, her body unable to stand upright. In the blink of an eye, the Ant King suddenly moves, appearing behind Cha. Before she can react, a powerful punch from the Ant King strikes her, throwing her violently into the wall, blood pouring from her mouth. Ma Dongwook shouts when he sees Haein badly injured. However, the Ant King has already moved and now stands directly before Dongwook. With a single strike, the Ant King shatters Dongwook's shield and left arm. Dongwook tries to fight back with his right arm, but the ant easily grabs it and crushes it. The power of the Ant King is terrifying, leaving Korea's top tank hunter powerless before it. Yunho charges from the side, but the Ant King counters with a flurry of slashes, taking him down in seconds. Jong-in casts fire magic, but the Ant King immediately moves towards him and defeats him in an instant. Taegyu keeps his distance, attacking the Ant King with his magic arrows, but the ant easily catches the arrows and crushes them without effort. In a flash, the Ant King darts towards him, knocking Taegyu back. Suddenly, the Ant King is struck, pushed back by a powerful attack. The strike comes from Dongwook. Confident, Dongwook says, "Even if you rip my arms off, as long as I have Hunter Byungyu, it won't be an issue." Meanwhile, Byungyu has activated his camouflage skill, hiding his presence completely. Although this skill requires him to remain still, it is the best skill for a hunter healer. Dongwook attacks the Ant King again, but the creature swiftly dodges. In an instant, the Ant King grabs Dongwook's leg, pulling him with incredible strength and slamming him to the ground repeatedly until he falls unconscious. Suddenly, the Ant King stares at Byungyu. Seeing the ant's gaze, Byungyu trembles in fear, wondering if the Ant King has detected him, despite his camouflage skill. Yunho warns Byungyu, but unexpectedly, the Ant King's sharp claws pierce Byungyu's body. Yunho is in shock, yelling Byungyu's name. In a dying state, Byungyu tells Yunho to run, and unexpectedly, the Ant King monster devours Byungyu's head alive. The hunters are stunned, unable to believe what they have just witnessed. Filled with rage, Yunho leaps to attack the Ant King. However, the Ant King effortlessly catches Yunho and strangles him until Yunho transforms back into his human form. From the body of the ant, Yunho hears Byungyu's voice telling him to flee. The Ant King possesses a terrifying ability. By consuming its prey, the monster steals their strength, including their memories and knowledge. The monster suddenly speaks, "Who is your king?" Yunho remains silent, unable to understand what king the ant is referring to. Meanwhile, the Korean hunters lie helpless and dying. Only the cameraman remains unharmed. Suddenly, the Ant King senses a strong presence outside the nest. It quickly flies out to search for the source of the newfound power. Yunho is fortunate to escape the Ant King's grasp. In his mind, he realizes that the monster is going out to hunt Guto Ruji. This opportunity must be seized. The Korean hunters must quickly leave the ant nest before the Ant King returns. However, the Korean hunters are not given a chance to relax, as hundreds of soldier ants have now returned to the nest, ready to devour them all. So, how will they escape this nightmare? Can they find a way out, or will the Ant King and his swarm claim them all? Outside the ant nest, Alpha Team, led by Go Teruji, was looking for the Japanese teams that had suddenly lost contact. Ishida started to panic after failing to reach Charlie and Delta teams. Ruji figured there was some kind of interference with the communication signal and ordered Bravo Team to respond. Bravo Team reported back that they were still alive and asked if they needed to search for Charlie and Delta as well. Ruji told them it wasn't necessary. Just finish your mission and meet up with Alpha Team as planned. When they got to where Charlie and Delta teams were last seen, they found both groups dead, their bodies badly mangled. Ruji then got a call from Matsumoto, the chairman of the Japanese Hunter Association. Matsumoto said he didn't care about the deaths of the Japanese hunters, and that their main goal was to destroy the South Korean team. He told all Japanese teams to retreat from the raid right away. After getting the retreat order, Go Teruji got his team ready to leave. But then, they were hit by a surprise attack. Ruji was quick to react, blocking the blow with his sword. But to his horror, the attack decapitated Ishida in an instant. Realizing how powerful their enemy was, Ruji told Hoshino to leave immediately and regroup with Bravo Team. He didn't want anyone getting in his way. He would face the Ant King alone. As he unleashed his aura of power, Ruji stared down the massive ant and taunted it. But then, to his shock, the Ant King spoke, asking if Ruji was a king. Ruji was surprised that the Ant King could speak. Then he confirmed that he was the king, while pointing his sword at the monster. The Ant King's response was pretty terrifying. It released an aura that was way more overwhelming than Ruji's, flooding him with a fear he hadn't felt in a long time, since his encounter with Jin-Woo. Without warning, the Ant King lunged at him, shattering Ruji's sword and severing his head in a single strike. Go-To-Ruji, Japan's top S-rank hunter, was completely defeated and unable to put up a fight. Meanwhile, the Korean team kept fighting off the ants heading back to their nest, despite being severely wounded. Yunho asked Choi to crank up his attack power, but Choi warned that if he did, they'd probably run out of oxygen in that place. And all the Korean hunters could do was rely on Choi's fire attacks to get out of this mess. As Choi started to struggle and the ants pressed closer, in a flash, a shadow warrior emerged, stopping the attacking ants in their tracks. Yunho was shocked and wondered who this Black Knight was. He felt like he'd seen it before. It turned out to be Jin-Woo's shadow warrior, who had been slipped into the hunter's shadows to keep an eye on them. The shadow then sent a signal back to Jin-Woo, who was in the city. Realizing how critical the situation was, Jin-Woo immediately activated his skill, Return. Meanwhile, a cameraman freaked out as two huge ants charged straight for him. Fear filled his face as he resigned himself to his fate. Suddenly, both ants were pierced by a sword, which was Igris's sword. Meanwhile, back at the broadcasting station in Korea, the crew shut down the live broadcast after seeing the desperate condition of the S-rank hunters who were on the brink of death. One of the crew members told the broadcasting chief that they were getting flooded with complaints from viewers. The chief felt like the broadcast couldn't go on, but just as he was about to give the order to shut things down, a crew member reported a mysterious figure suddenly showing up at the raid site. The chief stared at the monitor in disbelief and ordered the broadcast to continue no matter what. Deep down, he knew Korea's fate was now in the hands of this hunter. Meanwhile, Jin-Woo had arrived at Jeju Island, right in the middle of the ant monster nest. Calm but determined, Jin-Woo stood at the front lines with all his shadow warriors, facing down the hundreds of ants ready to strike. Jin-Woo called for Iron, and without hesitation, Iron activated his taunting cry skill, provoking all the ants in the nest. Jin-Woo smiled, impressed by Iron's growing smarts. Then, he readied himself for battle, gripping the Demon King's dagger. In the blink of an eye, Jin-Woo moved like lightning, slashing and cutting down several ant monsters in one deadly sweep. From behind, Tusk activated a magic barrier to protect the wounded hunters. Ma Dong-wook watched in confusion, not sure what was happening. Yunho explained that with Jin-Woo's presence, they didn't need to worry anymore. Meanwhile, Jin-Woo was moving non-stop, slashing ants at a speed too fast to follow. Beside him, Igris showcased his deadly swordsmanship, taking down enemies with incredible precision. Iron went wild, tearing through every ant that dared to come near, while Tank unleashed brutal attacks, easily swallowing up several ants. In the middle of the fierce battle, Jin-Woo realized they needed to end this fast. Standing among the scattered ant corpses, he calmly said one word, "Arise." In seconds, the dead ant bodies were taken over and transformed into new shadow warriors with a dark, menacing aura. The cameraman watching the scene felt a chill run down his spine, unable to believe what he was seeing. Moments later, the cameraman got a direct order from the broadcasting center to air the footage immediately, as the whole country was watching the event live. On the battlefield, the shadow ants launched an attack, mercilessly slaughtering the other ants without hesitation. As the battle raged on, Jin-Woo approached the injured hunters and handed out potions to heal them. The hunters were bewildered, shocked to see their wounds disappear as if what had just happened was beyond their understanding. Jin-Woo then checked on Hunter Cha's condition, while Ma Dong-wook looked worried because Cha was still unconscious. Jin-Woo stated that Cha was in critical condition, and his current power wasn't enough to heal him. With the ant nest temporarily cleared, Jin-Woo ordered the hunters to leave before more ants swarmed in. Suddenly, Jin-Woo felt a terrifying aura from a new monster ant entering the nest. The monster approached, mumbling something about searching for a king. Yunho was shocked to see the Ant King and realized that Ruji might be dead. Jin-Woo stood up and told Ma Dong-wook to take care of Hunter Cha while he faced the Ant King. The Ant King walked up to Jin-Woo and asked if he was the king of humans. Jin-Woo responded sarcastically, asking if now even insects could talk to him. Jin-Woo and the Ant King stood facing each other, each radiating an intimidating aura. Then, the Ant King provoked Jin-Woo by releasing an even more intense aura. Jin-Woo grinned and said, "Now you seem more like a bug." Meanwhile, the Korean television media was reporting what came in from the broadcasting center. The report confirmed that hunter Min Byung-gyu was dead, and the fate of the other hunters in the ant nest was still unknown. But then, the situation took a turn when a hunter appeared on the scene and changed everything, allowing the raid broadcast to continue. The public was shocked to see hunter Sung Jin-Woo on Jeju Island, facing off against the Ant King. On the other side, Matsumoto, the chairman of the Japanese Hunter Association, was furious about the ants killing Go Teruji. Reiji reported that the Ant King had reappeared in the nest. Matsumoto angrily asked if this meant that the Korean hunter was still alive. Reiji confirmed it, saying that now someone with magical power equivalent to the Ant King had appeared. Matsumoto cursed the situation and ordered his assistant to turn on the raid broadcast in Korea immediately. Meanwhile, in Jin-Woo's mother's apartment, she called Jin-Ah to help turn on the TV. She was worried and told Jin-Ah that her brother had just stepped out. Jin-Ah started to feel suspicious and rushed to her brother's room. When she opened her phone, her face went pale in shock. Her brother was already on Jeju Island. Even Mr. Go Gun-hee was excited to see hunter Sung Jin-Woo on the screen, saving hunters during the raid on Jeju Island. Back in the middle of the battle, after releasing an intense aura, the Ant King suddenly struck Jin-Woo with a heavy punch. The blow destroyed the ground beneath him, creating a huge explosion. The hunters, feeling the impact, began to worry, thinking Jin-Woo had been severely injured by such a powerful attack. The Ant King sneered, calling Jin-Woo weak and saying he wasn't the true king. However, as the smoke slowly cleared, Jin-Woo stood tall, completely unscathed. The hunters were stunned. They couldn't believe Jin-Woo had survived that brutal attack without a scratch. Jin-Woo immediately counterattacked. Using his Dominator's touch skill, he pulled the Ant King toward him. In a flash, Jin-Woo slammed his fist into the Ant King's face, sending the creature flying into a cave wall. The hunters couldn't believe their eyes. They wondered how a mage like Jin-Woo could possess such physical strength. Even though the Ant King was thrown back, he quickly got up and attacked again. Ant King struck with both arms, but Jin-Woo calmly blocked using his left arm. The impact shattered the ground beneath them. Jin-Woo retaliated instantly but was hit at the same time. They hit each other on the head, creating a huge energy wave around them. Even the cameraman almost fainted from the energy wave. The break on his head armor got Ant King's attention, and he was curious about this human. But Jin-Woo didn't give him a chance to think and hit him with another powerful punch. Ant King hit back with his own fist. The two punches collided with a tremendous crash, creating a massive energy wave that sent them flying in opposite directions. Ant King was surprised. He couldn't believe his protective armor had cracked from Jin-Woo's blow. But before the Ant King could think any further, Jin-Woo quickly got close and hit him hard in the stomach. Ant King immediately went on the offensive, firing a mouth attack that scratched Jin-Woo's cheek. Jin-Woo immediately backed off to keep his distance, but then suddenly fell to his knees, realizing he'd been poisoned. Ant King said it was a paralyzing poison he got from a poisonous snail, and he'd made it more deadly by using his magic. He was sure the human in front of him would be dead by now. The scene shifts to the Japanese team in the ruins of Jeju Island. Hoshino, trembling, admitted Ant King was unbeatable, even for Go Teruji. Frustrated, Kane scoffs at Hoshino's weakness and decides it's best to leave, worried they'll run into more trouble if they stay any longer. As a helicopter approached to evacuate them, the scene returned to the ant nest, where Ant King went up to Jin-Woo, who was paralyzed from the poison, and delivered a final blow to finish him off. But in an instant, Jin-Woo caught Ant King's attack with his hand, and countered with a crushing punch that sent the giant creature flying into the wall. A system notification popped up. Poison cure has been completed. That meant the poison in Jin-Woo's body had been totally neutralized. He could see that Ant King seemed agitated and cornered by the situation. Despite the advantage, Jin-Woo's thoughts turned to Hunter Cha's worsening condition. He knows he needs to finish this fight quickly before it's too late. With lightning speed, Jin-Woo darts toward the Ant King and delivers an aerial kick. The ground shatters under the impact, but the Ant King narrowly dodges by jumping into the air. The Ant King mutters to himself that his poison has no effect and that physical strength is useless against this human. He realizes that speed is the only way he can win. The Ant King boosts all of his stats into agility. His body becomes leaner, and deadly claws extend from his hands, glowing with a menacing aura. Jin-Woo calmly draws his Demon King dagger. They stare each other down, preparing for the next round. The Ant King strikes first, moving at an incredible speed, but Jin-Woo deftly dodges and counters with a strike from his dagger. However, the Ant King blocks the attack with his claws, and the Ant King knocks Jin-Woo into a wall, but Jin-Woo quickly uses the wall to propel himself back into the fight. They continue exchanging strikes so fast that it's almost impossible to keep up. The Ant King is shocked to realize that Jin-Woo not only matches his speed, but is even faster than him. Meanwhile, Jin-Woo thinks to himself that this ant might be on par with the Demon Monarch, or maybe even stronger. Despite that, he's confident that his dagger will only grow stronger after defeating this foe. Jin-Woo delivers a flurry of slashes, breaking through the Ant King's armor and claws. Seeing an opportunity, Jin-Woo decides to end the fight. Activating his Vital Strike skill, he attacks all the Ant King's vital areas with pinpoint precision. A system notification popped up. Vital Strike skill has been upgraded to Mutilate level max. Jin-Woo is surprised by the upgrade in the middle of the battle, but it only strengthens his resolve to finish this quickly. The Ant King attempts to flee, but Jin-Woo isn't going to let him get away. He pursues the Ant King at lightning speed, activating the Mutilate skill. A barrage of slashes rains down on the Ant King's body from all directions, cutting off one of his arms. The Ant King tries to retaliate with his claws, but Jin-Woo expertly dodges and maintains control of the fight. The Ant King, now cornered, wonders if he'll actually lose to a human. In his mind, there's still one way to turn the tide. He quickly releases a wave of magic energy to summon his ant army. In the blink of an eye, thousands of soldier ants fill the battlefield. The Ant King challenges Jin-Woo with this move, as if asking what he'll do now. But Jin-Woo just smiles and says one word: "Go forth." Instantly, Jin-Woo's shadow expands, and one by one, his shadow minions appear behind him, ready to face the incoming army of ants. The Ant King is taken aback by this sight. Without a word, the two forces charge at each other. Igris, wielding his sword, slices through the ants in front of him, while the High Orc generals tear into them with brutal efficiency. Jin-Woo orders Tusk to eliminate all the ants with his fire magic. Before Tusk can act, Jin-Woo sternly warns him to only target the ants. If any humans are hurt by his attacks, Jin-Woo won't summon him again. Tusk understands the command and activates his Hymn of Giant skill, transforming into a massive giant. With his enlarged body, Tusk activates the Hymn of Fire Dragon. In an instant, he unleashes a huge, devastating blast of fire aimed directly at the ant colony. The attack is so powerful it even pierces through the volcanic mountain where the ants have made their nest. The hunters couldn't believe their eyes. They think Jin-Woo looks like a demon king descending to Earth. The fire attack consumes the entire ant army, leaving only the Ant King behind. Frustration fills the Ant King. Since his birth, he has always believed he was destined to be the strongest, an endlessly evolving predator. He's devoured everything in his path, standing at the top of the food chain, and sees himself as a true monarch. But his view changes when Jin-Woo steps through the smoke. Fear starts to grip him. In a panic, he decides his only option is to flee. Activating healing magic to restore his condition, he takes off into the air, attempting to escape. But Jin-Woo isn't having it. He activates his Dominator's touch skill and slams the Ant King hard into the ground. Standing before him, Jin-Woo prepares to deliver judgment. The Ant King, powerless, still tries to crawl away, but Jin-Woo has already decided how this ends. He jumps into the air, activates Mutilate, and unleashes a series of strikes that rain down on the Ant King's body, ending his life in an instant. A system notification popped up. You defeated the enemy. You leveled up. After the fight was over, Yunho approached Jin-Woo and explained that Hunter Cha's condition was critical. Jin-Woo quickly checked and realized he had already wasted too much time. He needed to find a hunter healer immediately. Shadow Exchange was still on cooldown, and while he could get to the city quickly by riding Kai-Cell, there was a real risk that Hunter Cha wouldn't survive long enough. Suddenly, something clicked in Jin-Woo's mind. He turned to the cameraman and asked him to shut off the camera for a moment. At first, the cameraman refused. It was a live broadcast after all, but something in Jin-Woo's tone made him hesitate. Jin-Woo then ordered his shadow warriors to search for Hunter Min Byung-yu's body. It didn't take long. One of the High Orc Shadow Generals returned, carrying the lifeless form of Min Byung-yu. Jin-Woo scanned the body, grimacing when he noticed that the Ant King had likely devoured the head. Doubt crept in. Will this even work? But just then, a notification popped up. Shadow extraction can be used on this target. Yunho, clearly confused, asked Jin-Woo what he was doing with Byung-yu's body. Jin-Woo ignored him, stepping closer to the corpse. He uttered a single word: "Arise." A dark shadow began to creep out of Min Byung-yu's body, but then a notification interrupted. You failed to extract the shadow. Jin-Woo frowned and tried again, but the result was the same. It didn't make sense. With his summoning skill at this level, it should have worked easily. Yet it felt as if Min Byung-yu's spirit was resisting, refusing to be summoned. Jin-Woo hesitated for a moment. He knew this looked demonic, like something evil trying to summon the dead, but someone's life was on the line. He had to save Hunter Cha. Gritting his teeth, he tried once more. Arise. This time, the corpse reacted. A dense, black shadow enveloped Min Byung-yu's body. Yunho shouted angrily, demanding an explanation for what Jin-Woo was doing to Byung-yu's remains. But his anger quickly turned into shock as Byung-yu's body began to rise. Min Byung-yu had become a shadow warrior. The other hunters froze in place, stunned and a little terrified by the sheer power that defied all logic. Without any orders, Shadow Min Byung-yu began moving toward Hunter Cha. Calmly, he activated his healing magic, saving her life just as she teetered on the edge of death. Yunho watched the scene unfold with pure disbelief. Jin-Woo, noticing Yunho's expression, explained that he could sense a person's nature when they were alive. For Byung-yu, his healer instincts remained so strong that he acted on his own, without commands. The cameraman stood in shock, unable to process what he'd just witnessed. He now understood why Jin-Woo had asked him to turn the camera off. A power like this, raising the dead, couldn't be broadcasted to the entire world. Yunho placed a hand on Jin-Woo's shoulder, his voice calm yet firm. He admitted that Jin-Woo would do incredible things in the future. He believed Byung-yu's power would help them in the battles ahead, but he asked Jin-Woo not to force Byung-yu into unnecessary fights. Jin-Woo brushed Yunho's hand off, reminding him that this was the second time Yunho had touched his shoulder. But then, after a brief pause, a small smile crept onto his face. This time, Jin-Woo felt that Yunho's gesture wasn't about authority or orders. It was a sincere request. Walking toward Shadow Byung-yu, Jin-Woo agreed with Yunho. Cancel extraction. Slowly, Shadow Min Byung-yu began to fade, his form dissolving back into the afterlife. Before disappearing completely, he cast a final smile toward Yunho. Yunho stood still, returning the smile with deep respect. It was hard, but he knew this was the right decision. The silence that followed was heavy, leaving the hunters with mixed emotions as they watched one of their heroes leave for the final time. Meanwhile, the helicopter had arrived at Jeju Island, ready to pick up the hunters. Through the heavy rain, the hunters walked toward the helicopter, sadness clearly etched on their faces. Once everyone got in, Jin-Woo turned to Yunho, telling him to leave first. There was still something he needed to take care of. From a distance, the remaining swarm of ant monsters could be seen flying over Jeju Island. Jin-Woo summoned Kai-Cell and quickly hopped onto the dragon's back. He decided to pave the way and wipe out the remaining monsters scattered around. Kai-Cell spread his wings, soaring into the sky with Jin-Woo. As they flew, Jin-Woo took out every remaining ant monster, making sure the hunters could leave the island safely. Meanwhile, aboard the Japanese warship where the Japanese team had gathered, Hoshino was still visibly shaken, and the other Japanese hunters approached him, eager to know what had happened. Hoshino, trembling, muttered that the monster he saw was no ordinary enemy. Even Go-Teruji couldn't stand a chance against it. There wasn't a single hunter who could defeat a monster like that. Sugimoto stepped in to calm Hoshino, telling him that the raid on Jeju Island was over. Hoshino's eyes widened in disbelief. It sounded impossible. Sugimoto then recalled Ruji's words about a powerful hunter from Korea. He began to wonder if Sung Jin-Woo was the one who had defeated that monster. Suddenly, a crew member reported that a swarm of ants had been detected near the ship, and the hunters were immediately ordered to prepare for battle. Meanwhile, Jin-Woo returned to the ant nest to clean up the remaining monsters. His shadow mages cast fire magic, instantly burning the unhatched ant eggs inside the nest. Jin-Woo felt both surprised and lucky. Even by destroying unhatched eggs, he was still earning extra experience points. Opening his inventory system, he retrieved the Demon King longsword, an incredible weapon he had acquired from the Demon King. With the sword in hand, Jin-Woo gave it a try. His first swing unleashed a crackling bolt of lightning that shook the ground. Amazed by the sword's power, he thought it would be a waste to just leave it sitting in his inventory. Jin-Woo decided to use the sword to clear out the remaining ant eggs in the nest. The scene then jumped to the United States, where Michael Corner and David Brennan, the director of the American Hunter Bureau, were watching a replay of the Jeju Island raid. Michael commented on how extraordinary it was for a hunter to control hundreds of creatures, though it was a shame he came from such a small country like Korea. David stared at the screen intently before sharply asking Michael what else he knew about this hunter. Michael handed him a file, explaining that the fire incident involving Sung Il-hwan was connected to Jin-Woo. Sung Il-hwan had been found alive in an A-rank dungeon. Although he claimed to be a Korean hunter, there were doubts about whether he was human or a monster. Further investigation revealed that Jin-Woo was his son. David looked stunned. He realized this was a rare opportunity to recruit someone like him, even if it risked straining relations between the US and Korea, especially after America had successfully recruited Dong-soo. Still, a hunter like Jin-Woo was worth fighting for, no matter the cost. David then asked Michael if he was capable of handling the task. Back on Jeju Island, after getting rid of the ant monsters, Jin-Woo has now reached level 100. He approached the corpse of the Ant King and intended to get his shadow. Arise! Suddenly, a dark aura surrounded him. Jin-Woo felt something was off and wondered if this was the result of a failed shadow extraction. But as the darkness faded, he turned and smiled. The Ant King had been successfully extracted, and it was now a rank general shadow. The shadow knelt before him and expressed that it wanted a name. Jin-Woo was stunned to hear the shadow speak. He immediately asked how it could talk, and the ant explained that it had been able to speak even before it died. Jin-Woo thought back to Byung-gyu, Iron, and even Tusk, who had all lost the ability to speak after becoming shadows. He wondered if general-level shadows could ever regain the ability to talk. Jin-Woo then asked if the ant would still follow his orders, even though he had killed him. The ant replied that he wasn't dead. He had been brought back to life by Jin-Woo's power and would always obey his commands. After a moment of thought, Jin-Woo decided on the name Beru, inspired by the author of a famous novel. Afterward, he approached the Ant Queen's corpse and tried extracting her shadow as well. Arise! Slowly, black shadows emerged from the Ant Queen's body, and the extraction was a success, another rank general. But suddenly, control over the shadow ant soldiers shifted to the Ant Queen. Jin-Woo was surprised and turned to Beru for an explanation. Beru clarified that the Ant Queen's ability was reproduction and controlling the entire ant colony. That meant all the shadow ants now fell under her control. Jin-Woo frowned. There was no need for two heads in his organization. He made a quick decision to cancel the Ant Queen's shadow extraction. Meanwhile, the Shadow Knights continued tirelessly gathering magic crystals. Jin-Woo stopped them, explaining that the crystals would be used to rebuild Jeju Island. Instead, he only took Beru's magic core as a reward for his contribution to the raid, showing a level of generosity that matched his immense power. Jin-Woo then turned to Beru and asked how many ants were left. Beru reported that before the raid, the ant colony had about 8,700 ants, but now only 4,000 remained. Jin-Woo sighed deeply. There was still a lot of work to do. Looking at Beru, Jin-Woo gave him a new order: wipe out the remaining ants. Beru bowed respectfully and declared that he would carry out his master's command without hesitation. At the ocean defense line, hunters were in an all-out battle against swarms of flying ants. Warship cannons fired relentlessly, while mage hunters unleashed long-range attacks, trying to bring down the ants in the sky. Hunters from the White Tiger Guild were preparing to launch their next assault, followed by those from Fame Guild and Reaper's Guild, who also joined the fight. Amid the chaos, Lee Min-sung was paralyzed with fear. Despite being a Ranka hunter, his terrified expression drew nothing but a scornful glance from a passing hunter, who muttered that Min-sung was useless. Closer to the shoreline, retired hunters were bracing themselves to stop any ants that might reach the city. Ju-hee and Mr. Song stood anxiously, watching as the swarm of ants approached, growing closer by the second. But just as the ants were about to attack, they were suddenly obliterated. It happened so fast that Ju-hee and Mr. Song couldn't even see what had taken place. Moving at incredible speed, Beru tore through the flying ants in the sky, wiping them out with flawless accuracy. The Jeju Island raid is wrapped up. It took 2 days to clear the ant colony that invaded Korea. Most of the ants have been eradicated, but some flew into the Sea of China. A national-level hunter stood tall, staring down the swarms of ants scattered across the sky. He sized up the many enemies calmly, then drew his 2 swords and released a surge of magical energy that enveloped his body. With a swift slash, he unleashed an attack that wiped out dozens of ants in midair. Their lifeless bodies fell, plummeting into the sea. The hunter sheathed his swords and thought to himself that if the ants that Jin-Woo had defeated were still alive, this fight might have been more interesting for him. Meanwhile, a man watched the battle between Jin-Woo and the Ant King closely. His assistant, Laura, explained that Jin-Woo might have a problem with Hwang Dong-soo. There were rumors that Jin-Woo was the mastermind behind the death of Hwang Dong-soo's older brother. The man, Thomas Andre, a national-level hunter and master guild scavenger in America, realized that if the rumors were true, a feud between Dong-soo and Jin-Woo was inevitable. Unfortunately, personal conflicts like that would only make it harder for him to recruit a talented hunter like him. Laura asked him what he would do if the conflict between Dong-soo and Jin-Woo broke out. Thomas gave a sharp, decisive look. To him, Hwang Dong-soo was part of the Scavenger Guild, and the Scavenger Guild was his. No one, not even the government, was allowed to touch what was his. Later that night on Jeju Island, the hunters from Guild Knights were doing their rounds, collecting magic stones and patrolling the island. As they walked past an ant nest, Jong-soo started talking about his past, which he thought was tragic and sad, but to his junior, it sounded ridiculous. As they were busy collecting crystals, a monster ant appeared out of nowhere. Jong-soo quickly sprang into action, decapitating the ant instantly, then reassured the mining team not to worry. If more ants showed up, he'd take care of them. But their peace was shattered by a mysterious figure who appeared out of nowhere and started walking toward them. Jong-soo immediately warned them that the figure was in a restricted area and demanded to know who they were. The hunters started getting nervous and wondered if the figure was human, preparing to act. The figure glared at them and spoke in an unintelligible language. Jong-soo quickly realized it wasn't human, but a monster. Suddenly, someone snapped the fingers, and an awful aura spread, causing all the hunters to faint in an instant. At the same time, another terrifying figure appeared behind the monster. The 2 figures were the Beast Monarch and Frost Monarch. Frost Monarch explained that he put them to sleep for a bit so they wouldn't cause a ruckus. He felt the remnants of Monarch power in the area and was confused about why the creature was helping humanity. Beast Monarch replied that if Frost Monarch was so curious, he could just ask the creature itself. However, Frost Monarch ignored him and snapped his fingers to open a dimensional portal. He stated that the hunt for the creature would proceed as planned and that he needed to deal with the other creature first, as it was likely still nearby. Beast Monarch taunted him, realizing that Frost Monarch didn't want to get involved. Frost Monarch admitted it and stepped into the dimensional portal, vanishing. Beast Monarch thought the same and decided there was no need to make a fuss. He opened his own dimensional gate with his claws and followed after. Behind the success of the raid on Jeju Island, there was a deep sorrow felt by both the hunters and the people of Korea. The country is holding a funeral for the fallen victims. In the fifth raid on Jeju Island, a total of 4,801 hunters participated, with 64 hunters and 32 civilians losing their lives. Even though this incident claimed many victims, the numbers were still lower than the 4 previous raids. Among the crowd, Jin-Woo attended the ceremony and placed a single flower for the victims. Sung Jin-Woo has become the hot topic in the media, sparking controversy among the public. Some praise and support Jin-Woo for his abilities, especially after he single-handedly took down an S-rank gate. Netizens speculate that his current status might be on par with national-level hunters. But not everyone is on his side. Others criticize and question his actions, arguing that if Jin-Woo had joined from the start, Hunter Min Byung-gyu might still be alive. At the event, Yunho and Jin-Woo crossed paths. Yunho said he believed there could only be one hero, and that war could only end if hunters worked together. But he was wrong. Jin-Woo did it alone. Yunho asked Jin-Woo to hold his head high because it was Jin-Woo who had ended the tragic tale. With tears in his eyes, Yunho thanked him. At the same time, Jin-Woo and Hunter Cha exchanged glances. However, Hunter Cha quickly turned away, her face flushed. Jin-Woo was left confused by her strange behavior. After the funeral, Jin-Woo met with Mr. Go Gun-hee, the chairman of the Korean Hunters Association. During their conversation, Jin-Woo revealed his intention to form his own guild, to which Mr. Go replied that the association would handle all the necessary arrangements. Mr. Go asked if Jin-Woo had placed any barriers on Jeju Island because strange things had happened. Hunters from Guild Knights suddenly fell unconscious when they entered the ant nest to collect magic crystals. This took Jin-Woo by surprise. He replied that he hadn't done anything like that, then asked what the hunters said after they woke up. Mr. Go explained that they couldn't remember anything after regaining consciousness. Jin-Woo wondered in his mind if there were still traps left by the ants. Soon after, an association staff member came to report that someone wanted to meet with Mr. Go. Mr. Go excused himself, and Jin-Woo prepared to head home. In the parking lot, before Jin-Woo could get into his car, a strange man approached him. The man introduced himself as Adam White, a senior agent from the United States Bureau of Hunters, handing him a business card. Jin-Woo recalled hearing about an outsider from Jinho and immediately asked what Adam wanted. Adam explained that he had important information that no country or institution would share, information that could benefit both sides. He also mentioned that they were impressed with Jin-Woo's fight on Jeju Island. However, Adam refused to discuss it there and offered Jin-Woo a meeting with their deputy director for more details. Jin-Woo hesitated but decided to ignore the offer and get in his car. However, before he could leave, Adam mentioned something about an upgrader, someone who could enhance the powers of other hunters. This piqued Jin-Woo's interest, and he decided to follow Adam. Adam took Jin-Woo to a hotel where the deputy director of the American Hunter Association was waiting. The man introduced himself as Michael Connor, and Michael got straight to the point by handing over immigration papers to the US and offering Jin-Woo the chance to become a US citizen. Jin-Woo looked annoyed at the change in topic, emphasizing that he was there for information. Michael smiled and explained that the person with that ability was right here. He ordered his assistant to bring someone in. Soon, a woman named Norma Selner was introduced as the only person in the world capable of enhancing a hunter's power beyond their limits. Jin-Woo looked at her, sensing something different about her compared to other hunters. Michael asked her to explain her ability to Jin-Woo. Ms. Selner began explaining that, although it sounded hard to believe, her ability allowed a hunter to surpass their power limits. She explained that there were 3 stages of enhancement, similar to a forced reawakening process. Jin-Woo, curious, asked how much of an increase could be achieved. Calmly, Ms. Selner replied that the results varied, but by the time someone reached the 3rd stage, the power boost could range from 20% to 30%. In his mind, Jin-Woo started to connect this explanation to what had happened with Hunter Hwang Dong-soo. This offer might be why Hwang Dong-soo moved to America. Such power would be hard to turn down. Michael stated that Ms. Selner's ability was a special gift for Jin-Woo. should he agree to become an American hunter. They would prioritize him in receiving this benefit and give him the freedom to choose any guild he wanted. Ms. Sellner added that there was no rush. They just wanted to help Jin-Woo unlock his first stage of potential, asking him to consider it as a gift from them. Jin-Woo thought that if this woman was so confident in her ability, it only made him more curious. Ms. Sellner took Jin-Woo's hand and asked him to look into her eyes. Meanwhile, Michael thought to himself that this was the perfect opportunity. In his mind, once Jin-Woo went through this stage, he would certainly feel the power increase and be eager to continue to the next stage, eventually signing the immigration papers. Ms. Sellner began focusing and activated her power. In an instant, she entered Jin-Woo's consciousness, delving into his soul to unlock his power limits. But the deeper she went, the denser the darkness became, an endless emptiness. In the middle of that void, a mysterious figure appeared, staring at her with an intense, piercing gaze. Ms. Sellner screamed in terror, as if trying to escape from something unseen. Her guards immediately aimed their guns at Jin-Woo, assuming there was a real threat in front of them. Michael, realizing the situation, scolded his men, ordering them to stop and criticizing their ignorance for almost causing a major problem. He warned them that if this had happened in front of Thomas Andre or Liu Jigang, everyone in the room would be dead on the spot. Michael then bowed, apologizing to Jin-Woo for the incident, and ordered his men to take care of Ms. Sellner, who was still visibly shaken. Meanwhile, Jin-Woo could only feel confused about what had actually happened to Ms. Sellner. Michael told Jin-Woo that Ms. Sellner was unwell and promised to contact him another time. He then called Adam to escort Jin-Woo back to his home. After Jin-Woo left, Michael asked Ms. Sellner what had just happened. Trembling, Ms. Sellner said that Jin-Woo was like a king, a force unlike anything she had ever witnessed before. Michael, hearing this, tried to confirm, asking if Jin-Woo's power was comparable to a national-level hunter. Ms. Sellner shook her head slightly, feeling that comparison didn't do him justice. To her, Jin-Woo's power was something entirely different, something beyond ordinary comprehension. The figure she saw wasn't just hunter Sung Jin-Woo, it was something darker, deeper, and far more terrifying. She concluded that Jin-Woo's power had no limits. Michael fell silent, reflecting on her words, while Jin-Woo left the place with a calm face, but his mind full of questions. The scene cuts to the Korean Hunter Association office, where Mr. Go is deep in thought, thinking about hunter Min Byung-yu's sacrifice during the raid on Jeju Island. He's feeling the loss hard, and he knows that the challenges ahead won't be solved with just one sacrifice, but his thoughts are interrupted when his phone rings. He gets a report about a B-rank gate that popped up in the middle of a highway. He's planning to reach out to a major guild, but then he remembers that the gate is near hunter Sung Jin-Woo's new guild office. Meanwhile, Jin-Woo's stuck in traffic, thinking about his last meeting with Mrs. Sellner. Her terrified look reminds him of something tied to the system, and he figures Mrs. Sellner probably won't want to meet with him again after that encounter. Suddenly, Mr. Go calls to let him know what's going on with the gate. He asks Jin-Woo to check it out and deal with the dungeon if he can. Jin-Woo figures the traffic jam is caused by the gate. With a faint smile, he agrees, especially after Mr. Go assures him he has full authority to act. A huge gate shows up out of nowhere in the middle of the highway. Jin-Woo arrives at the scene shortly, and drivers stuck in traffic are surprised to see him. Some recognize him as the famous S-rank hunter, and they know he's here to handle it. However, an association officer stops him, firmly stating that Jin-Woo can't enter without permission. Jin-Woo gets frustrated and calls Mr. Go. After a brief conversation, he hands his phone to the officer. The officer's attitude shifts immediately when he realizes it's the association chairman on the line. Jin-Woo strolls into the gate, and the officer mutters under his breath, hoping Jin-Woo will run into trouble. But those hopes quickly turn to fear as the gate transforms into a red gate. The officer is shocked and can't believe what he's seeing. Inside the dungeon, Jin-Woo was surprised to find that the exit was closed. He guessed that he must have entered the red gate and realized he'd overdo it. Suddenly, he remembered his mom's words, telling him to do what he wanted. As an S-rank hunter, Jin-Woo would be able to save people as his dad did. His dad was a firefighter before he became a hunter, and his mom fell in love with him because he loved saving people. She also told Jin-Woo not to overdo it, and these memories made Jin-Woo a little relieved, knowing that his mom was not against him becoming a hunter. Jin-Woo sensed that if there weren't too many monsters in this dungeon, he could clear it in one day. Go forth. Jin-Woo summoned his shadow warriors, and giant forest guardian monsters began emerging from their hiding spots, triggering a fierce battle. The shadow mage cast fire magic from a distance. Igris stabs a monster right in the head with his sword. Iron goes wild, smashing monsters with his axe, while Tusk and Tank scorch the monsters with their fire magic. Beru goes on a rampage, brutally tearing through monsters with ease. After clearing the area of monsters, Jin-Woo paused, his thoughts lingering for a moment. A hunter was born to hunt. Monsters aren't the only enemy for a hunter. Hunters have to be careful so that they don't get hunted as well. So first-rate hunters can't put their guard down even more. Even if there are hundreds of thousands of hunts, the hunt will never end. Let's move on to the next target. With that resolve, Jin-Woo stepped forward into the forest, his determination unshaken as he moved to confront the dungeon boss.